Let's start with what did you make of Hope Solo's comments that Sweden is a bunch of cowards?
I think I made of it what everyone else in the world did, and that's just it was someone in the heat of the moment being a very poor sport. And I said this before, but it's like I grew up, and trust me, I broke plenty of ping pong paddles. I kicked in my sister's door. I am the consummate poor sport. But at some point, you outgrow toddlerhood, and when you're an Olympian, we hold you to a higher standard. And those are thoughts that, as frustrated and as upset as you are, you need to keep it inside because you got beat by a better game plan that executed the game plan better than you did, and that's just it looks poor upon you. And I think it's regrettable that she has to keep the conversation on herself and not the future of this team. But ultimately, keeps women's soccer in the news, and maybe that's not a terrible thing.
Allie Farkas here, and I have to admit that I am somewhat a soccer newbie in terms of strategy and things like that. So the thing Hope Solo is mad about is that Sweden held the ball, played a lot of defensive style, played a defensive style. She didn't like that. But to me, I say to myself, doesn't this happen in every sport? I see it happen in hockey where teams hold the puck. I see people intentionally walk people. I see football teams that just run and don't pass to churn up clock. Isn't this a justifiable strategy and not something to be looked down upon?
Yes, that's the shocking part of it. She's played soccer for 35 years of her life, and it's called a tactic, and it's called a smart tactic when it works. So, you've got to be better, and you've got to solve it. And maybe as a goalkeeper, she doesn't have any control or influence on the attacking side of the field. Maybe that's where frustration creeps in. But this isn't new to sport. This isn't new to soccer. We face this in Olympic qualifying. We face this in matches, international friendlies. Anytime a team is not as well equipped to deal with you, to go mano-a-mano all over the pitch, you sit back in your shell and you pick and choose your moments to come out of that shell and counter. And they executed it brilliantly, and ultimately, obviously they came out victorious. So it was a weird comment from her because they knew that this was what the team was going to do, and she was just being bitter Betty in the moment.
We're talking with Aly Wagner, former member, U.S. soccer women's national team. We've had the debate about the men's basketball team, which means more, an NBA title or a gold medal. So in soccer, which means more, Aly, gold medal or World Cup?
It's funny. I've been a part of 2 World Cups, 2 Olympics, and I always valued the Olympics a little bit more because I think there was an element of women's soccer. People don't know as much about soccer during my career, and so when you tell people you have an Olympic gold medal, they bow down. Oh, they're in awe. If you tell them you play in the World Cup, they're like, that's great. But I think the conversation has shifted now, where everyone understands and knows how important a World Cup is. That it's the world's game, and now I think that players on the team value the World Cup over the Olympics. And I know that the Federation does because they've placed the importance on the World Cup over the Olympics in terms of their orders down to the coaching staff.
Allie, why can't teams win both? The U.S. women were trying to be the first team to win the World Cup and a gold medal, or win the gold medal after winning the World Cup. What makes it so difficult?
Oh, it's a question that I don't necessarily have the answer to. Otherwise, U.S. Soccer would probably hire me in an instant. I think ultimately it's that when you win a World Cup, you have to take advantage of those moments. Like when these athletes come home from the Olympics, they are going to be flying around the country doing sponsorships, doing appearances, trying to reap the reward of their hard work. And that's what the players have to do after a World Cup. For women, you've got to take advantage of this moment when you are in the spotlight. And so these players are flying all over the place, doing appearances, not focusing on their training as much. And then you never get a break because it is such a quick turnaround when you are supposed to not be playing soccer maybe for a month. You're expected to come into camp in that next month fit and ready to go leading up to the Olympics. So everyone could say you get a break away from the ball. Well, you're not getting a physical break away from the fitness training and the mental exhaustion that accompanies that. So I think it's just a very tall order for any individual and any team to put back-to-back performances together, and that's why we haven't seen it.
Allie, in the early part of the year, a number of the U.S. women's soccer players, including, headline kind of by Alex Morgan, they stood up for equal wages and kind of unfair treatment, playing surfaces, wages, all of the above. The women's soccer team certainly has more fame in this country than the men's soccer team, but speak to the differences that the two teams face and the inequalities in the two.
What do you mean in terms of what financially the difference is and
all of the above? The women's soccer team was playing on subpar field conditions, I remember.
Right.
And then, the wages, all of the above.
Well, I mean, we know already that the men make more per diem than the women do, and that's just a silly, $10 difference a day, but that is absurd. Why would they make more per diem than the women if things are equal? Let me just backtrack and say this is U.S. Soccer is a non-profit organization. So, you have to look at what their mission statement is. It's to spread soccer in this country, make it one of the preeminent sports in the world or in our country, and so that's their fundamental goal. And I think there's no better way to do that than have a successful team. And so you can say, well, look, then we should value the women a little bit more in this situation. Ultimately, I think that I am someone who believes in meritocracy, so I can see why in the past men have been paid more because they bring in more money, simple from FIFA. So if you want to really solve the issue, you got to go to FIFA and say, let's get equal pay dollars filtering down to these federations for winning a World Cup, for getting to these knockout stages. Well, that doesn't happen. So then the onus has to fall on our federation. And I think they've done an amazing job supporting women's soccer to this point. I mean, you look at how far ahead we are from the rest of the world. It's not even apples to lettuce. It's ridiculous how the advantages that we have compared to the rest of the world, but it's still not enough. So I thank U.S. Soccer for the support to get us to this point. But now that the women are bringing in money for the federation, that it can be argued they're bringing equal dollars. I'm not an accountant. I don't even want to delve into the disparities of what each side is claiming in this argument. But I think ultimately the women need to be flying charter planes if the men are flying charter planes. The women need to be flying business in first class if the men are flying business in first class. So I think this has been brought into the public's eye, and there's no way U.S. Soccer is going to not be able to make these things right going forward. I mean, those are little nuances, and we sound probably like brats claiming that the women should get this. But, hey, if the men are getting it, the women should be getting it, especially because they are that much more successful in terms of bringing home notoriety, championships, medals, although not in this case.
Aly Wagner with us, we'll remember U.S. Soccer women's national team. Are you surprised that the USA women got beat?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I know the U.S. soccer the team wasn't playing their best soccer going into that match, but I absolutely expected them to win. And even when they tied it up 1-1, I went, here comes another goal. Another goal is going to come. I mean, I didn't even think it was going to go into overtime. And then it went to overtime. I said, it surely has to come now.
Yep.
And then when it went to penalty kicks, the U.S. has the mentality. I was shocked up until the last goal by Dalkas in the shootout that the U.S. ultimately lost. I mean, they have the more depth. They have better players. They're better prepared. But that's the way soccer goes sometimes, that you can dominate possession, you can dominate shots on goal, and still come out on the worst end of things.
And Allie, I'll let you go on this. Who ends up winning the gold now? What's your thoughts there?
I don't see how Brazil doesn't. I don't think Germany's very strong defensively, and they haven't looked great in the attack. On the flip side, I don't think Canada and Sweden both have been implementing very, very good game plans. And I don't want to say that shouldn't be valued. It should be. They beat the U.S., for instance. And Canada beat France, two of my opinion, the best teams in the tournament. So they have the ability to do it, but I think sometimes that perfect game plan runs out. And that's why I think Brazil comes out victorious in terms of just their overall talent. They've got the crowd behind them. And there's just kind of this intangible in the air that is putting women's soccer on the map in Brazil, and I think that there's some esoteric energy pushing them to win it.
Allie, appreciate a few minutes. Thank you much. Continued success with the rest of the Rio Games.
Thanks, you guys. Thanks for having me on.